everyone, welcome back to some League of Legends DFS esports breakdown. It has been a while, but we are back. We are getting into Worlds 2022 play-ins. So just a quick run through in case you guys aren't aware. Worlds 2022 is pretty much the culmination and the kind of Super Bowl, if you will, of League of Legends. We are starting in a pre-group stage almost before we get down to the actual group stage. Play-ins is just like an extra opportunity for some, quote-unquote lower-end teams from the main regions to have a chance to get into the main Worlds group stage and have a chance to compete for winning Worlds. It is ultimately the end goal, I think, for all teams to win the Worlds title, prove you are the best team in the world. I'm sure you guys are probably aware, but in case you guys aren't, recently China has been kind of taking over and dominating. We obviously saw RNG win MSI, which is like a halfway through the year mini Super Bowl, kind of way you can view it, and this one should be pretty interesting. So if you guys aren't, we do have a little bit of a different format this year. Don't know whether it's COVID related or what, but essentially we have just kind of like a bunch of random schedule days. Typically, Worlds is a pretty big event and it's pretty exciting to watch, although it's typically not great for DraftKings specifically. May have to try to focus a little bit more on the betting, maybe, I'm not sure, but I typically have not had a ton of success betting these games. Just the way that things are, there's a lot of randomness and stuff involved, but pretty much the DFS slates are going to be weird. I think DK made a pretty decent job of it, but there's 3 separate slates per day. Just kind of the way it breaks down. We'll see how it goes going forward, but it seems like they're just going to try to get as many games into a slate as they can without having duplicates. So it's just interesting because a few of these teams play twice. Like we have Loud play twice in the same day. We have Fnatic play twice. So we just have like a weird, interesting thing here. Like RNG plays once. So I'm sure that they're going to try their best to get as many of these games in as possible, but we just have, duplicates of teams playing twice. They've done different formats and stuff before, but just kind of keep that in mind that we're going to try and go over all 3 slates. However, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to try to avoid these the last 2 gamers, unless there's something that's uniquely interesting to it. I typically try to avoid 2 gamers. You guys know that's why I take those 2 gamers off. Take those nights off during the LPL slates, that kind of stuff. I try to avoid these 2 gamers. It seems like there's not a lot of ways to avenue and get unique on the slates and that kind of stuff. So I typically try to avoid 2 gamers as much as possible. I just find that they're not very interesting. They kind of dictate themselves into pretty similar. There's just not options. You just don't have options. You don't have ways to get unique. A lot of people are going to end up building the same, and it's just not very fun. And I also don't think it's very profitable to do so. So I will typically try to be avoiding these 2 gamers unless kind of stated otherwise, but we'll try to cover most of them anyway. Just overall for this video, at least for this first video for Worlds play-ins, I'm going to talk a little bit more about every team, where I think they stand, and that kind of stuff. I'm going to be completely transparent. I don't actively keep up with any leagues outside of the LPL and the LCK. I watch every one of those games. I do other things as well. I don't have enough time to watch every league, even that much. I did gather some stats. It's not super advanced stuff. I'm not claiming to have anything crazy here, but I kind of just took the stats from their most recent split to just the regular season, not playoffs. I tried to get the regular season stats because I think that might be a little bit more what we're looking at here, but I'm not sure. Maybe playoff stats would be a little bit better considering that these are kind of high impact games. But and then I also have a strategy that I think kind of was interesting during MSI and I think Worlds last year that I kind of learned. So we'll try to talk about that and get a little bit of that as well. I don't want to keep it hidden or anything, but the strategy pretty much is I want to try to avoid these gigantic favorites and try to avoid the the super one-sided games. So we know that like an RNG is like probably one of the world's top 5 teams, and they're down here in the play-ins going up against teams from like Australia, Turkey, Mexico, Brazil, like some of these lower end regions. We know RNG is obviously an insane team, so we can see these odds like I mean they're not. I'd have to check a different day, but like we see some like Mad Lions is like in -900, like that kind of stuff. My strategy is going to be to try and avoid these gigantic favorites. I feel like what we've seen is these gigantic favorites are they just don't produce that often. You know, they do kind of hit crazy. RNG is going to be a bit of an anomaly in that sense because their stats are so insane. But you know, I think these closer games could get a little bit more interesting, at least for DFS standpoint. So that's something I'm going to focus on during the year. I don't know if it's going to work with it. I'm just kind of laying that out there for everyone. You know, you can agree or not. That's kind of the way it works. You know, for these videos, if you guys agree, that's awesome. If you don't, that's also awesome. I don't want to tell anyone what to do or how to play, but yeah, I just try to break it down a little bit. I just like talking this stuff as well. I like talking through everything. I like doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, this one should be interesting. Quickly, we're going to kind of run through some of the teams I'm looking out for and some of the teams I'm looking to kind of get away from. So at first glance, there's a few teams I legitimately know nobody from, and that's going to be Isurus from Latin America. I do recognize Seiya. I do think he's an okay mid laner. The Chiefs Esports Clubs, I don't know too much about them, but I do know Reyes is actually a former LCS player, and he did come back, and he's okay. I think Arthur is actually a pretty solid jungler as well. When we look at somebody like Brazil and Loud, I do know Robo and Tinones. I think they're pretty okay solo laners. I do think they're pretty strong within their region, but again, I don't know. I think their region is pretty weak overall, so don't know too much. Then we do have some like returning teams like Saigon Buffalo, who's coming back after a pretty strong MSI performance, in my opinion. We have Detonation Detonation Focus Me, DFM. I do think they're pretty decent as well. I think they're going to be a team that's going to be pretty interesting to look at. Some of the teams I think kind of borderline have very little to no chance, unfortunately. I do think I think making a tier list maybe would have been a little bit better in hindsight, but obviously I think RNG is not going to drop a map. Maybe they will drop some just because they're extremely insane, like aggressive play style can lead them vulnerable occasionally, but I have them as one of the world's top 4, at least guaranteed top 5 teams in my opinion. So I don't expect them to be doing dropping many point matches. Obviously, DRX is relatively weak. I think they're going to be an interesting team to look at odds-wise. I'm not going to make a definitive statement on where I'm standing with DRX quite yet because it's going to be pretty odds-dependent, I think. I think they might get a little bit overhyped and a little bit overvalued because of the region they're coming from. Korea is kind of widely regarded as that number 2 region in the league or in the world, and I do agree with that. However, I think overall the LCK has been pretty weak, and they've been a little bit closer to everyone else as opposed to being close to Korea, or China, I should say. So that's going to be pretty interesting. The thing to know with Fnatic is they do unfortunately have a couple of subs. I just looked at them, but I think they have Bean in, and I think their bottom lane is all support or substitutes right now. Because of COVID, so when I think they should be getting their full roster back. Yeah, so it should be Upset and Hylissang instead of Bean and Rux. We obviously know Bean played, I think he substituted in for them last year, and he was actually okay, so I don't think this hurts Fnatic enough to make them not like the 3rd best team here. However, it's something to kind of keep a note of. And then obviously I do think Mad Lions and then Evil Geniuses probably round out that top 5. However, in terms of teams that I think are going to be pretty strong, I obviously think RNG is on another level. I think DRX, you could argue, is kind of a mini tiers. I'm gonna see. I want to Worlds 2022 play-in tier list. Oh, this is way too many teams. So sorry to do this, kid, but kind of bear in mind or try to keep this in mind here. So when I look at these teams, I think RNG S tier kind of by themselves. I would say DRX, Fnatic, Mad Lions probably A tier, probably pretty good. Probably not going to beat RNG, although I could definitely see maybe something there, but I doubt it. Then it comes to maybe like a B tier. I would probably have EG, DFM. That might be the only B tier. Then I think we have a lot of interesting teams. I would put probably Loud. Uh, I would probably put Istanbul Wildcats, Loud, Saigon Buffalo, maybe Chiefs in that kind of next tier. And then I think in the bottom tier, we're going to have Beyond Gaming, Isurus, and I think that might be the only two down there. I think Chiefs would probably be in that one above them. So I think as far as like quote unquote free wins, I think we're probably looking at just Beyond and Isurus. But again, I don't know a bunch of these teams. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to put out a front and act like I've watched VODs of these teams or anything. I really don't know. I've looked at the stats. I kind of recognize some of their names from their past international performances and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of shooting a little bit blind here as well. I don't want to pretend and try and act like I'm a lot smarter than I am or anything like that. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to talk about this stuff, talk about it. That way I have a good idea on it, and hopefully you guys can have a better read on it as well, going from nothing. So when I crunched these numbers, this is from their regular season. All I did was I took their combined kills per minute, which is the CKPM, and the average game time, AGT, and I combined those into like an average kind of combined kills per map of like how many expected total kills are there. Obviously, when we come down to the matchup head to head, we're going to have a little bit of a different view on it, I guess you could say. But in terms of what we're looking at now, it looks like we have a good idea of what teams are going to be generally slower and what teams are going to be generally quicker. So we do have an idea of that already. So now that we kind of have a good kind of base floor, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of, I can't think of the word. The kind of good base foundation. Now that we have a good foundation of what we're looking at here for these teams and for everything here, we can go ahead and get started looking into these slates individually. So the first slate here, 3 games, is Isurus, Mad Gaming, Fnatic, EG, and Loud versus Beyond. Look at these games odds-wise. We do have EG is a slight favorite over Fnatic. I guess that is probably pretty dictated on the fact that they have the Fnatic is missing their bottom lane. We do have Mad Lions as a minus 900 favorite over Isurus, and then we do have Loud Gaming being the pretty decently sized underdog against Beyond here. So this is going to be a good start here. So off the bat, I do like going with Loud against Beyond, and I do like looking at the other game as well. Again, I just kind of talked about my plans my kind of plans in terms of what I'm trying to do at the start here. I'm not, we'll adapt if it's not working, but for right now in my pre-tournament plans is I'm going to try to avoid these gigantic favorites. I think they're pretty heavily owned typically, and I don't think that pretty much the way I view it is I don't think that the odds that a team like Mad Lions is going to score so much that they're untouchable is going to equate to how heavily owned they're going to be. Everyone's going to start their lineups with Mad Lions, mix in some other things here because they are the gigantic favorite. They're so safe, kind of quote unquote. So I think looking to avoid them makes a lot of sense on this slate. I'm going to start relatively small, kind of entry fee wise, just because I want to try to get a feel on all these teams. Like I said, I don't know a lot about these teams. I'm not going to front for you guys. I'm just a guy talking about these games who enjoys DFS, who enjoys League of Legends. I'm not anything special here, so I'm not going to lie to you guys. And that's just kind of the way I'm going here. I'm going to try to avoid Mad Lions on this first little mini slate here, and I'm going to look at probably Fnatic versus EG. I'm going with EG here. Actually, I don't know. We'll talk about that later. But Beyond Gaming versus Loud. Again, this is one that's I have these kind of like in a weird order here. Sorry. Again, I do recognize a few of these loud names. Like, I do think Tinones and Robo are pretty decent solo laners. I don't know that much about these Beyond players. I wonder if any of them have name changed. That's something I need to check. Um, let's check some of these players from Beyond. Lika played for Maki. That's pretty decent. Beyond. Husha, Minji, Waco, previously known as Zhou or Suwaku, don't know that. Kino. So yeah, I don't recognize these Beyond players. Again, there's going to be a lot of randomness. I'm probably going to look like a fool in a lot of these. I'm definitely prepared for that. However, again, I at least recognize some of these loud players. I do think they're not terrible. I think Brazil's typically a little bit underrated, especially from like a DFS standpoint. So we'll look at the. I should have done these a little bit differently now that the matchups are out. I kind of had these numbers preserved from a little bit earlier when I was getting prepped for it. But when we look at so we go like Mad Lions, Isurus. Mad Lions averaging about 25 kills, Isurus about 23. Those are pretty low numbers. Total set at about 24. I do think day one is also pretty slow typically. So when we have teams that are already pretty slow, I'm going to be looking to avoid this one either way. I think it's part of my strategy, and also the numbers are not quite adding up there. So that's one I'm looking to avoid. Fnatic EG, this is honestly one that's not great either. These teams are both like right about 25 kills per game. So that's one I'm kind of looking to avoid as well. They both play pretty slow. They're at about pretty insanely close numbers. They're at the same kills per minute, and their game time is about the same as well. So 25 is like the exact kind of thing there. However, I just wonder if the Fnatic bottom lane makes them play a little bit slower as well. I honestly don't love this game either, but there's 3 games on this mini slate. We're gonna have to go somewhere, and I'm willing to go in this game a little bit. Again, we don't have Upset, we don't have Hylissang. I think those are 2 very, very solid players for them. It's going to be Rux and Beans. They have Rux as their AD and then Beans as their support. I wonder, is that right? I thought Beans played AD carry, so that's pretty interesting. Looks like... yeah, it looks like Beans match history. Let's check Rux's match history. So yeah, Rux plays support. Beans plays AD carry. Okay, so that's interesting. That's already kind of wrong here. So yeah, you're definitely gonna look to try to get Beans in that press and get, I guess, in pretty much all your lineups, and you have to avoid Rux. That's kind of interesting that they've already made this mistake. That's definitely pretty detrimental to this slate. That they have a support player listed in the AD carry role, and the AD carry listed in support. So you pretty much are forced into going into Beans here at support. Maybe if you wanted to go like a Beans captain or something with Mad Lions, that's probably like an insane cash game build just because you are getting double AD carry on 2 favorites. Actually, they're not a favorite. Fnatic aren't the favorite here. But either way, I'm going to be leaning Fnatic here. There's going to be a theme. I'm going to try to avoid these NA teams. I just typically do not have the belief in them that a lot of other people do. Again, I think EG is maybe a little bit of a special case because I do think there's a lot of interesting things here with players like JoJo inspired, maybe Danny, but again, I'm not even sure if EG's Danny is going to be back and playing. I would assume so, but who knows? Like they were swapping their AD carry out during their playoff run, and that's just not an inspiring thing to look at. Looks like here they have him listed just with Kaori. So yeah, I'm just not seeing it here with EG. I'm going to go with Fnatic as that. They're the underdog on the betting, but they're favorites all here on DK. So I'm willing to go with Fnatic here, and I think I'm going to pair them up with Loud. Um, we'll talk about players here in a second, but I just think beyond overall, I watched the finals or like their last playoff series, and I just didn't see much. I saw a little bit more from Loud. I recognize their names. I just feel like a little bit better about Loud. I'm kind of surprised the odds are this way. Um, I think this is probably a pretty close game. Definitely two pretty kind of low end teams. I don't know. It sounds toxic when I say that, but that's just kind of the way I'm feeling with that one. I'm not feeling that. I do think Mad Lions get the win. I do think I just like avoiding that big favorite. You know, I don't want to keep talking about the same thing in circles, but yeah, I'd probably take Mad Lions to win, but try to avoid them DFS. I like Fnatic over EG. Don't love it for DFS. They're probably going to be more of a secondary option for me. And then we have Beyond versus Loud. Loud play at a pretty solid pace. They're averaging almost 28 kills per game. And Beyond play really, really slow at 23.1 or 23.3. But again, there's not many spots I like here at all. I don't like really many of these ideas. So I'm going to just take a light starter, you know, get started with this DFS slate here. Go with trying to pair up Fnatic and Loud. I think that's going to be a pretty interesting start here, especially fading Mad Lions so early. So to look at the teams, we'll go to Oracle's Elixir. We'll look at Loud. And then we'll look at I wonder why that didn't open. Fnatic. To get an idea of their players, kill participations, and where we want to go and how we want to build our lineup. So stats by I thought it showed in the overview. But we need to look at the there was just a way to look at it. There we go. So Fnatic versus EG, and then Loud versus Beyond. This is a pretty interesting way to view the games, but yeah. So we could see Loud have a pretty solid participations. They're a team that likes to grew up a lot for sure. So that's a spot I like to get to. Obviously, we see with Fnatic, they're interesting. They have Beans as a support and Rux here as an AD carry as well. I'll have to look into that. So, okay, so maybe don't go with exactly what I was saying earlier. We'll have to keep that. We'll have to keep that in mind. I'll try to give an update on that at some point. I'll have to look into this Beans Rux situation because I could have sworn Beans played AD carry and Rux played support. I don't know. I just don't know enough about this situation. I guess so. No, we'll look at that. We'll just look at that right now. We might as well. We're here. We'll look at that. Sorry for wasting your guys' time so much here. So Rux match history, Beans match history. Yeah, I mean Bean has been playing 80 carries pretty much the whole time. Rux has been playing matches or supports. Yeah, I can't see this. I don't know, but there's something weird there. Maybe I'm not sure, but either way, I'm looking to primarily stack up Loud here. We do see solid participations across the board for Loud, so I look to try to get them in as much as possible. When it comes to which way to go back with, I definitely like trying to get Beans as a support player. So I'm not sure. Maybe you could I think there's a way you can go like double mid, like with Tinones. I think like Tinones, Croc, Robo, Brants, and then you go with like humanoid Beans. I think that way you avoid getting a support player altogether. That's probably the way I'm going to go. I typically don't like trying to give out like full builds like that, but that's kind of the way it goes, and I think that's the pretty solid direction to go ahead and get started with, and that's the direction I'm liking. So yeah, that'll be it for that slate. We'll go ahead and move on to slate number 2. I'll try to speed run these ones a little bit faster. I know this video is probably running a little bit long, but it is a starter video, so we're talking a little bit more about this overall stuff. When it comes to the second set of games, so we do have Loud back again. We do have Loud playing as the underdog against Nation Focus Me. We have Fnatic again against Chiefs Esports Club, and then Mad Lions versus Istanbul Wildcats. So we do have the same 3 teams going up against different opponents here. This is technically the main slate, but I personally do not like this one as much as the first one. I don't think it's as great, that's for sure. And then typically, or sorry, not typically, but just the way this one kind of breaks down, I view Istanbul Wildcats as a pretty weak team. Not as weak. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place here. It's been a while. I view Istanbul Wildcats as like a pretty, not a walkover team, but still pretty weak overall. So I just don't see, I don't know that much about how this one is going to break down. Again, I just don't love Mad Lions. I feel like they're going to be a relatively highly owned team. Again, they're not that big of a favorite here. They're not that overwhelming of a favorite to where it's like you have to go with them here. That's for sure. So I think you could definitely look to them here, and I do think there's a pretty decent underdog shout here for Fnatic versus Chief Esports Club. So there's going to be a few teams I'm looking to buy into early here. I like Istanbul Wildcats, not in this game, but I like buying into them early. Chiefs Esports Club is definitely one I like buying into as well. I'm really impressed with Arthur, and I think Reyes has been pretty decent as well. Arthur's been a beast in his league. I think Reyes is decent as well. I think Chiefs have an opportunity to steal some games. I think they're going to be a pretty interesting team overall. I think Istanbul as well, although that's kind of a little bit more of a name thing. I do think Holy Phoenix, I recognize all these Turkish players. They've been around the block a lot. They're pretty, I don't want to say like heavily touted team, but they're a pretty decent Turkish team. They have decent enough players. I think they can make this series pretty close with Mad Lions as well. And then Detonation Focus Me Loud. That's oddly enough the one that I'm most kind of sold on in terms of, I think Detonation Focus Me probably beat Loud pretty well. I think DFM is a pretty solid and kind of fundamentally sound team, kind of for better or worse. And I just don't see Loud being able to make this game interesting, what's the word? Like Fiesta enough. Like I don't see them being able to force DFM into making mistakes. I think DFM will be able to force Loud into making mistakes. So oddly enough, I feel more comfortable taking a shot with like Istanbul Wildcats versus Mad Lions or Fnatic versus Chief Esports Club, Chief versus Fnatic. This one is definitely one where you could try to adapt your lineups midday or like after these first set of games. Granted, lock will probably be coming before the end of Mad Lions Beyond. These games typically kind of just run longer than the predicted start time. They are 1 hour out, so 2 p.m. my time at least, I think. Which is Mountain Time. So 4 p.m. Eastern, I believe, is when the games start. No, 4:30 my time. So 6:30 Eastern. No, this is the second slate. So 4:30. Yeah, so they start at 2 p.m. my time. Sorry, geez, I'm sorry. I'm just so all across the board here. Yeah. So if you do want to watch these first set of games and try to adapt your lineups for the second set, I don't think that's a terrible idea. However, I personally would try to avoid the kind of thrashing that could present. I would try to stick to your pre-worlds leans, at least for the whole first day. I don't want to overreact. Like hypothetically, if Mad Lions were to get crazy upset blown by Isurus here, I wouldn't try to avoid them for series 2. I think that maybe like things like nerves, that kind of thing, could be playing into that scenario. So I wouldn't try to overreact too much to their first series. For their second series, I would try to keep your initial leans as such for series number 2. I do think there's some exceptions, like maybe a Fnatic look insanely out of sorts with their new AD or like with their new bottom lane. I definitely think that's something where you could adapt to. And again, I do think this is one where I'm looking to pair up DFM. Although, granted, I don't think that their numbers are that great. So we do have DFM at like a 24.5. We have Loud pretty high up there, but at almost 28. So that's actually a pretty decent spot if you do want to get on DFM. Fnatic versus Chiefs. Fnatic are pretty slow at about 25. Chiefs are one of the highest ones. They are the highest one at 28. They play at an insane pace. I do love Chiefs again uh, as a team to pick. That's spry for some upsets and can also make these games pretty fiesta-y. And uh, Mad Lions, Istanbul Wildcats. So Wildcats, I have them at 24, which is like one of the lowest, I believe. And I think Mad Lions are like 25. So that's a series I would look to try to avoid in this kind of second set. Overall, I think I would look to try to get into like this Fnatic, like these second and third games here with Fnatic, Chiefs, and Detonation Focus Me. And I think my build overhaul here is going to be going with Chiefs over Fnatic. I do think that's a pretty interesting spot for Chiefs. Hopefully Fnatic get the job done in the first series so everyone doesn't flip-flop to Chiefs. That would be ideal. But yeah, I like going with Chiefs. I'm going to pair them up with DFM. I know it's the odds don't kind of reflect this way, but I think, it's day one. We're going to take our stands. We're going to be wrong somewhere, I'm sure of it. But my stand here is I do think Chiefs are spry for some upsets. I think Fnatic is a little bit overvalued here. I like DFM to keep it clean against versus Loud. So yeah, that's going to be the way I'm going in that one. We'll look at the player numbers for how we want to. Sorry, I'm not used to using Oracle's Elixir in this way here. So we'll look at teams. The team we're looking at for is DFM. I wonder if you could search. Yeah. And then the other one was Chiefs. Whoops. Did I hit Chiefs Academy by accident? Chiefs Esports Club. Yeah. Chiefs versus Fnatic. DFM. I guess it doesn't matter, but we look at their top laner has insanely low co-participation, but everywhere else is pretty solid, especially Reyes 87% or 79%, sorry. Allerdrk is about 90%, Tally 70. So it looks like everyone except for the Chiefs top laner is involved there. For DFM, Evie's at about 60%. I think that's fine, especially on a 3-gamer. Steel's numbers are not great, but Utapon and Harp are definitely the primary focus, I think, of this one. I would definitely look to try to prioritize the DFM bottom lane. I wonder if Fnatic play here in this one as well. I wonder if they've... Yeah, so they do have Beans on the support role as well here. This one could make things a little bit interesting. I will note maybe it's worth waiting for those first set of games to maybe adapt and change for the second set of games. But I see like 80% chance. Like I'm not sure why Beans wouldn't be the AD carry and Rux wouldn't be the support. So keep that in mind. You may have to end up playing Beans in your support role here, no matter what, just because the nature of the role, the AD carry position gets all the kills. Not all the kills, but they get the majority of the kills. They get most of the CS numbers, that kind of stuff. So just the nature of the game, you kind of have to play Beans here, I think, no matter what. I would be pretty surprised if Beans wasn't able to outscore people, especially, and I think this what could be a pretty interesting game overall. I didn't purposely avoid it, but I did kind of skip over the fact of game stacking. Game stacking can be viable in these early games here, especially. I just think you just have to kind of keep a lookout out for it. I didn't see any options here really in the first set of games. I think in the second set of games, I do think this Fnatic Chiefs Esports one could get interesting. I do think both of these teams can get interesting. However, I'm just kind of waiting for the game stacks that involve the hyperactive teams. Like we see Chiefs at a 28. We see Loud at like almost a 28. We see Saigon Buffalo and RNG almost at a 28. I would look to try to get like 2 of these 4 teams fighting each other before I'm gonna start looking at game stacks overall. So that's something to keep in mind, as we're looking ahead. But if we do have Beans playing AD carry, actually playing AD carry and he's in the support role, I do think you have to get him in one way or another, because I do think this game is going to be close, probably pretty kill heavy, and he's the AD carry price of support. You kind of have to go that way. Although that would be a pretty good way to get unique. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. But I'm willing to go with DFM. I like most of their players, we just talked about the player numbers. You can build these in a lot of ways, but obviously I think like Yutapon, Harp, Yahrong, maybe Evie, maybe leave off Steel and try to get Arthur in, because we know Chiefs play heavily through Arthur. It looks like Steel's numbers are pretty low, so you don't want to go that way perhaps. But yeah, there's a few ways you can build this. I do think that's going to be the way I'm going for the second set of games, is going with Chiefs and DFM. So that's going to be the way I'm going. Again, team slots are pretty random. We don't know. I don't think, I didn't look up enough. You just kind of have to coordinate your team slot here. I don't think there's enough info to really have a direction. Obviously, typically, I think the way to go is you want the higher average game time and the lower average kills is what you want for your team slot. But again, just kind of coordinate it up with your teams. There's not a lot, I think, of direction that you can go for team slot. This brings us to the third slate of the day, and I'm going to make this one quick. I'm going to go ahead and skip this one. I'm not going to make this one interesting. I do think RNG beat the brakes off of DRX. Again, I don't really respect DRX that much, and I think these odds are a little bit crazy, honestly. I would expect DRX to have been a pretty decently sized favorite here. And Saigon Buffalo, I don't think they should be this big of a favorite versus IW either. However, again, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make a lineup here. I do think a lot of people are going to either go with RNG Saigon or RNG IW, and it's going to just be wildly duplicated. And I'm just not going to do two gamers unless there's a interesting way to build it, and I just don't see one here. I would just personally be going RNG with one of these other teams, which is going to be kind of what everyone else is doing. So I'm going to be avoiding this one, and obviously, and again, this can also try to help to keep a video a little bit shorter as well. Because I've been rambling a lot today. It is a little bit rusty in terms of the video making stuff, but yeah, I think overall avoiding this one. I'm going to watch the games. Obviously, I'm pretty excited for them. I do think RNG get the job done. I'd be pretty interested in Saigon Buffalo, Istanbul Wildcats, kind of maybe in a little bit of like a betting standpoint or something. I do like Saigon and I do like Istanbul Wildcats. These are both of the teams that I'm kind of that I kind of have listed as a little bit more of like a spry underdog pick, a little bit of an interesting kind of like dark horse. I do like both of these teams. I don't think Saigon should be this big of a favorite. I don't think they're that great. I think they're getting a lot of steam kind of from their impressive games at MSI. Obviously, you remember them nearly beating like T1, for example. I think they're a pretty interesting team, for that matter. But this is a pretty steep price tag, I think, in this instance. So I'm going to be skipping this two gamer. I think they're going to be pretty interesting to look ahead for in the next day. But overall, I think that's going to be the way I'm viewing this one. So yeah, I think that'll be it for me today. Hopefully you guys managed to get something out of this video. I know it was a little bit all over the place. It's been a while for me. But kind of quick recap, I guess. I think RNG stomp everyone. DRX I'm a little bit low on. I think they're going to be a little bit overvalued during most of the group stages for the play-ins. Fnatic is going to be pretty price dependent. I'm kind of selling beyond gaming. I think Mad Lions is going to be pretty price dependent. I think EG is price dependent. I think DFM is price dependent. I'm looking to buy in on probably Loud, Saigon, Chiefs, and Istanbul Wildcats. And I think Isurus is a team I'm going to just completely sell on. I don't think I'm ever going to get to Isurus, but I think Saigon, Loud, Istanbul Wildcats, and Chiefs are going to be pretty interesting, especially against some of those more middling teams. Like I think I would say DRX, Fnatic, Mad Lions, EG are probably the teams I'm looking to probably fade a little bit more, although I'm not completely, giving hope on them or anything. I just think that's kind of my view on that so far. So that'll be it for me today. Sorry for the little bit longer, long-winded, weird style video, but yeah, that'll be it for me today. I will see you guys all again. I guess maybe not tomorrow, but the next day, sometime, after these first set of games. Hopefully I'll try to get a video up for the next one, but it's kind of a weird thing where we have a lot of games very quickly. So I'll try to make the videos and stuff, but yeah, I'll thank you guys for tuning in if you guys made it this far, and I'll see you guys for the next set of the games.